Cassie Ventura has officially wrapped up her testimony in Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking and racketeering trial after nearly 20 hours on the stand. Her account included graphic details of alleged abuse, rape, and coercion. But the defense, particularly today, pushed back with texts, audio, and claimed she was a willing participant in their so-called freak-offs. But that's not all. We even learned more today about what was inside Diddy's hotel room and heard striking testimony from Dawn Richard. I'm going to be breaking down what happened in today's courtroom with Elizabeth Millner, Law&Crime's reporter, who was inside to hear and see it all. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Well, after 4 days of harrowing testimony, Casandra Ventura has finally stepped down from the witness stand in Sean Diddy Combs' federal sex trafficking and racketeering trial. And her account that spanned allegations of physical abuse, rape, coercion, alleged freak-offs, even this purported $20 million settlement, this painted quite a picture of their decades-long relationship. And it gives the jury a lot to think about. And I gotta say, I think it made this case a whole lot grayer, particularly after the cross-examination. So we're gonna break down everything that we learned from today's proceedings, day 5 of this bombshell trial, and also what we can expect to come. So to help me do that, I want to bring back on Law&Crime's reporter who has been inside that courtroom for every second of these proceedings. Elizabeth Millner is back with us. Elizabeth, so good to see you. First of all, I got to say, before you came out to do your hit, there was a little bit of like commotion out there. Basically, there's a lot of people watching this case. There's a lot of people outside that courthouse. Can you briefly explain to us what the atmosphere is like, both inside and outside the courtroom? It feels like that is the scene. That's the epicenter right now.
Absolutely. And, you know, look, there's been a lot of public interest in this case, not just from us in the media, but also those who just either want to get a glimpse of Diddy himself, want to get a glimpse of Diddy's family. And so there is never, you know, just not enough people from the public who are here outside that courtroom. When I came outside today just to chat with you, Jesse, I walked outside and all of a sudden I saw a woman with kind of hair extensions in her hair. She was yelling back and forth with a man was yelling at her. It was pretty tense. I didn't know kind of what was going on, but a lot of people were crowding around them. I walk across the street and all I see are free Diddy t-shirts, which is very surprising, something I didn't see when I entered the courtroom this morning, but that was very early this morning, so maybe a lot of people were realizing it's a Friday, let me go into the courthouse, let me see what's up, and let me just see if I can get a glimpse, because some people are still under the assumption Diddy just walks out of the courtroom every day, but that's not the case. He still goes back to MDC Brooklyn every night, every day after trial. But for the most part, there's still kind of a busy scene. Even right behind me, a lot of people kind of crowding around. Either the media is going to be out there, it's people with cameras, their cell phone cameras, actual physical cameras as well too, just trying to get a glimpse of what all this action is. Because, you know, even with us in the media, the cameras still go all the way down the block. You can think of pretty much every big legacy station that is here at the courtroom covering this case. You can think of podcasts, you can think of YouTubers and influencers who just want a piece of this action to see what this proceeding is like, to see the trial of Diddy, because that's exactly what is happening. As far as inside the courtroom today, as far as the mood goes and everything like that, it was another highly anticipated day because we were wondering how the cross-examination of Cassie Ventura would continue. As far as those who were there to support Diddy today, again, it was definitely a different scene than it was the first couple of days of trial, in that, you know, his daughters aren't there anymore, his mother wasn't there. But, you know, just I do want to say, as far as why they're not there, a source did tell me it's because the twins are about to graduate. It is graduation season, it's prom season, so they did fly back home in order to attend to those events. But as far as the support system that Diddy did have inside the courtroom, it was his sons, his 3 adult sons, who are inside that courtroom today: Quincy, Justin Combs, Christian Combs. And then as far as Cassie's support system inside that courtroom today, you had her attorney, Doug Wigder, inside that courtroom, Cassie's mother inside that courtroom, her brother, and then of course her husband, Alex Fine. And so a lot of people just in general were anticipating where this cross-examination would go, how the government would come back from the cross-examination, especially, you know, after seeing a bunch of text messages that were either about, you know, them being in love together, or the sexually explicit messages that were talked about ad nauseum today. But that was kind of the mood and the atmosphere as far as kind of what's going down here at the federal courthouse.
Now, we've said this before, I'll say it again, there are no cameras allowed in this courtroom, unfortunately. There's no recording devices or transcribing devices that are allowed. But if they were, you know how much Claude NoPin would help? This is an incredible tool that leverages AI to boost productivity. So first of all, you can wear it in all different kinds of ways, on your wrist. Right now I have it on my lapel. And you can use it during meetings, interviews, anytime you need to capture everything without lifting a finger. It transcribes in 112 languages, it tags speakers automatically, and it summarizes everything into one clean template in seconds. And NoPin doesn't just record, it also serves as a note taker, allowing you to take notes anywhere, anytime, hands-free. It extracts insights, it boosts efficiency, it saves time, it allows you to stay engaged in the conversation. So right now you can get 10% off. Just click the link below or scan the QR code on screen. If you are serious about leveling up, start here. And before we get into the substance of the actual cross-examination, and by the way, there was 2 other witnesses who took the stand too that are very, very pivotal to this case, which we'll get to. Overall, real quick, what did you notice from the jury today? What was their demeanor? Anything catch your attention about them? I know it's so hard to try to read what they're doing, but anything you can tell us about the jury?
Yeah, it's always hard to kind of read them, especially from where I was sitting inside the courtroom today. So I got that angled view, which means I got a lot of the back of their head. So I saw a lot of them, for the most part, doing what they've been doing all week, something that the judge even noted, paying attention. They were paying attention, they were jotting down notes, they were looking at exhibits, again, still doing that tennis match between either looking at Ana Maria Esteveo doing the cross-examination, then looking at Cassie, or they're just focusing on Cassie. But there was still, as far as what I could see from the jury, it doesn't seem like they're bored of this case, maybe just yet. But for the most part, they are being very attentive. As the judge pointed out today, they're coming in on time. They are ready to serve on this jury, and they have been paying very close attention to everything that's going on.
And that's interesting you say that, because yesterday, I think you were saying during the cross-examination, they looked a little checked out maybe. I was wondering maybe it was they understood where the defense's case was going. Was it a bit too repetitive? But I felt today's cross-examination was different. I'll tell you, one of the things that everybody's been talking about while you've been in the courthouse was apparently this audio recording. This audio recording that was played of Casandra Ventura, where she was apparently quite angry. This is interesting because in a case where the defense is trying to characterize everything that Casandra Ventura allegedly went through was consensual, and that Diddy's actions are being mischaracterized as criminal, what was this audio tape? What was the value of this audio tape? What did the jury hear?
Well, the value of the audio tape seemed pretty great to the defense. It was from 2014, and it was an audio recording between Cassie and somebody that she had worked with named Sujit. Now, Sujit's kind of important to Cassie's story because Sujit had told Cassie he had an sexually explicit video of her on his phone, that somebody had told him about this video. And so she confronted Sujit about this because she had initially thought this was a freak-off video and just wanted to know where he had gotten this video, how did this video come into his possession. And so the audio was, I think, kind of a pretty bombshell moment this morning with the testimony goes, because when you're listening to Cassie on the stand, she is very soft-spoken. She is very quiet, and she is very calm, cool, and collected when she's answering questions. But under this audio, you could tell, and this was, more than 10 years ago at this point, but you could tell she was very upset while trying to confront Sujit about essentially this sexually explicit video. So it was taken in Atlantic City, and then the defense had kind of point out during this time Diddy was all the way in California. But Cassie had told Sujit on this audio recording, we'll figure it out, and asked him, so you saw a video of me pleasuring myself, and Sujit said that he did have the video, and he had this video on her phone, and Cassie says, well, it's not me pleasuring myself because you said somebody else was in the room. And Cassie repeatedly had asked, can I see it? Can I see it? Can I see it? Then she goes into, and this is probably the part that kind of may have worked in the defense's favor, she says, I will kill you. I will kill you. I'll put you in a desert. I will cut you. She says, I'll get somebody else to do it because you're effing with my life. She had said that, this sugar honey iced tea He is not cool, and you can take the first letters of those entire words to see what I'm talking about. But essentially, it was just kind of her screaming as she confronted Sujit about this sexually explicit video I had talked about during the lunch hour. You know, I can understand why she would be noticeably angry about this, right? Like, it's a private video that somebody randomly kind of has in their possession. And so, you know, we all say things that we don't necessarily mean, such as, I will kill you. We kind of say that when we're mad. We may say it in jest. It's unclear if, you know, she actually wanted to pursue this or anything like that. But for the most part, again, I can understand her rage in saying these things. But for the defense, it definitely was something that they were trying to paint it as. Maybe you're not as, you know, meek and quiet as you kind of portray yourself to be. You can get aggressive. You can go and be confrontational. And then you can use your boyfriend and his power to kind of make the threat a little more serious. Because when Cassie was under direct examination, she had talked at great length just about this meetup with Sujit and how Diddy security was involved and how they had this whole meetup about this, and it was kind of a group meeting, and that a lot of people were scared and concerned. So then when you hear it kind of coming from the audio, it was just kind of a little stark contrast. And but she was, again, forthcoming about her being just embarrassed or upset if this video were to get leaked or to get out into the public. And so that was the pretty much the essence of this video, but, you know, or excuse me, this audio recording. But you know, you could definitely hear her rage and her kind of upsetness about this whole incident.
Well, I tell you, I think what the defense might have been doing was saying, man, she didn't want this tape to get out, and she made sure, and Combs did everything in his power to make sure this tape didn't go out. And it's not so much, hey, this is a criminal trying to cover up his criminal activity, but this is a guy who's trying to make sure that Casandra Ventura and he are protected from the tape coming out. Again, recharacterizing some of Sean Combs' behavior. That's what I took away from it. But by the way, I have to ask this real quick. Jonathan Oddie, Jonathan Oddie, this is you know, he was the guy that allegedly shot up the Trump property in 2018. This male performer, at the time of his arrest, he told investigators he was a sex slave of Sean Combs, mentioned Casandra Ventura. At the time, nobody really knew what to take of it. He came up with regarding this recording today?
He definitely did, but not necessarily regarding this particular recording when it comes to Sujit. As far as the recording goes, that mentioned Jonathan Oddie, it was about this secret video that he had taken of Cassie and Diddy at a freak-off, and Diddy was trying to make this video go away. And according to Cassie, while she was testifying, that Diddy spent a significant amount of money so that this video wouldn't get released. And then Cassie had explained during her cross today that essentially she and Diddy never used Jonathan again after he had did this. He said that she had said that he was never used again in a freak off because she was concerned about this situation because Oddie had threatened to release this video. When Cassie spoke to Diddy just about this recording, Diddy essentially said, I'll take care of it. And the defense said, you know, would this video be embarrassing if it was released, especially for Diddy, because Diddy is a celebrity, but it would be embarrassing for you too, right? Because you're also a high profile name around this time period. And so that was definitely the Oddie mention that was, you know, kind of clicked in my head today, because he was someone brought up a couple days ago when Cassie was under her direct examination, because they put up a whole bunch of exhibits, a whole bunch of photos of the escorts that were used in freak-offs, and the face that definitely stood out to me was Jonathan's face. And so just to kind of hear essentially why Jonathan was never used again during a freak-off, this kind of explains it.
Now, there was a lot of testimony regarding the 2016 incident at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles, where you have this videotape footage of Combs appearing to beat Casandra Ventura. We've talked about that ad nauseum. I mean, it's one of the key pieces of evidence. But there was a lot more about the communications that came up after this happened, right? Can you talk to us about those communications? What were Combs and Ventura talking about after this 2016 incident?
So the defense was essentially asking Cassie, was Diddy blacked out during this incident? Cassie said she had wrote a message to Diddy around this time. You get effed up the wrong way. You always want to show me that you have the power to knock me around like a rag doll. A message that I think we have seen even prior to trial. The defense was kind of insinuating that Diddy had did this because he was combining a mixture of drugs and alcohol. Even during yesterday's cross-examination, they were kind of insinuating that Diddy had a bad batch of drugs when he had attacked Cassie in that hotel room. She kept on during this moment, and I actually kind of wrote this down, she kept on kind of forgetting to submit stuff into evidence. At one point she even said, "I'm sorry," and it was just kind of a whole incident. And so Cassie was talking about, Diddy had sent a message to Cassie saying, "I'm so horny for you." Cassie had responded, "You are? What made you feel that way?" And because these text messages were sent after the physical assault that happened at the Intercontinental Hotel. She said while she was on the stand today that it was essentially strange for Diddy to even kind of say that. Cassie had responded in a message to him saying, "We need a different vibe from Friday." Friday being the night that the day that the hotel incident had happened. And Diddy responded to Cassie, F Friday and F-U-C-K Friday. Diddy had also said, "I don't want to do that again." And Cassie had responded, "LOL, true." And I'm kind of paraphrasing these text messages because they went by so fast. And then Diddy had responded to Cassie, "What are you doing?" And Cassie later sent a text message essentially saying, "I love you." And so I think that what the defense was trying to do there is just insinuate that even after this brutal and physical assault that happened, that they just kind of went back to their normal pattern of just saying "I love you" to one another, kind of putting a Band-Aid over the situation. But still, it wasn't a situation where she had called things off completely or anything like that. Then Cassie was asked about the photos that she had took of her face after the assault, and Cassie said she actually didn't remember taking those photos. And these were photos that we had seen inside the courtroom. It's of Cassie in the back of the Uber after this assault happened. She had sunglasses on, but you could definitely see a busted lip, or a fat lip as she had called it. But you could also see a black eye because she said she got hit in the face before she even left that hotel room, before we had seen that surveillance video that she was actually assaulted first in the hotel room before everything else happened in the aftermath of that. And so I think the defense, again, trying to kind of paint this as this was a domestic violence thing. This was something that always happened, but this was something that had happened because Diddy was on drugs during this time period. I was really kind of thinking that at some point today they would show that apology video that Diddy had done, that we had all seen, that was posted to his Instagram story after the video was released. But at no point today did either the government or even the defense bring this video up, because if you're going to be talking about how drugs were at the crux of this, and he was so effed up from all these drugs when all of this was happening, that you would think that because Diddy had said during his apology video that I was so messed up during this time period, and that I was thinking that, essentially that he was so messed up from the drugs, that they would try to paint that picture. But that video didn't even come in today. We haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen it, but it's possibly we haven't seen it yet too.
And I mean, there was that message where she says, "I'm not a rag doll. I'm somebody's child." That's pretty impactful message, to say the least. Now, another really difficult moment that they spent a lot of time questioning about was the 2018 alleged rape, right? So she had testified that Sean Combs raped her, and that there was another time after that they had consensual sex. What was the cross-examination like regarding that alleged rape? Because that is a key alleged moment in this case.
And a moment too, especially in the courtroom, because this was the moment that Alex Fine had to get out of the courtroom, because again, as we've been talking about this kind of a couple of days now, that the defense might possibly call Alex Fine as a witness to impeach his own wife's credibility, something that I think is kind of a very interesting tactic for the defense to kind of take. But, inside the courtroom, Alex Fine isn't listening to this portion of the testimony. He actually just kind of walks out and sits, I guess, outside or in a private room, kind of waiting to get the call to come back in. But as far as the 2018 alleged rape that had happened, the defense was kind of asking Cassie a little bit about why she and Diddy were meeting around this time. And Cassie had said that she was actually no longer with Diddy at this time period. She was actually dating her now husband, that being Alex Fine. So around this time, Cassie had sent a message to Diddy saying, "I love myself more," paraphrasing, because again, a lot of messages going back and forth. She said, "I love myself more. I forgave you." And that she never went away. She being Gina, somebody who has been very much of a talking point throughout Cassie's testimony, because according to Cassie, she being Gina kind of helped with the dissolve of the relationship, because Cassie had seen a photo of Diddy and Gina together, as Cassie was thinking that at this point the two were monogamous and that Diddy was no longer seeing Gina. So Cassie had sent a message to Diddy saying, "I promised I wouldn't be with you anymore." So around August of 2018, they had a closure conversation, and during this time period, Diddy was trying to get Cassie to go to Burning Man, a big music festival that I guess the two had gone to a number of times throughout the course of their relationship, because I think we have to always kind of put in context that these two were together for a long period of time, a longer relationship than I've ever had in my life, minus my parents, and so 11 years is a long time period. And yes, they were on and off for a lot of periods of time, but it seems like from these messages that Diddy was kind of thinking, maybe we'll get back together, maybe this isn't truly the end or anything like that. So around this time, the defense was kind of bringing up the rape allegations that were made in Cassie's federal lawsuit, which we know was settled the next day, because the defense was trying to say that you had said this happened in August, but in your lawsuit you said this happened in September and not August. You met with prosecutors in 2023 after the lawsuit was filed in New York, and the defense says you told the government that this incident happened in September of 2018, and then the defense says that Diddy was acting strangely, that Cassie had said that Diddy was acting strangely to the government during a 2023 meeting that the two had, that Cassie had with federal prosecutors and federal agents, that she was kind of describing the alleged rape that happened and said on that night that Diddy was acting pretty strange. The defense says that Cassie had told the government Diddy was kind of acting anxious as well too, something that wasn't necessarily talked about during her testimony when she was recounting the alleged rape. The defense asked Cassie that you told the government that Diddy was bipolar and that he actually wasn't in his right state of mind. And so then we got more text messages, these being from August 21st of 2018. Always paraphrasing, just gotta say, Cassie wrote to Diddy, "Hit me when you can," hit as in like, let me meet up with you. Diddy had responded, "Okay, I'm at an investors conference, you good?" Diddy said, "I'm calling, it's going straight to voicemail." Cassie said, "Thank you." And then Diddy said, "I know I look bad to you." And so I thought that was kind of an interesting point, because maybe it is kind of helping her claims a little bit here that things just weren't necessarily right. And so we saw more text messages from that day where the defense says that Cassie told the government in April of 2025, just last month, that the rape happened in August of 2018. And I think they were trying to point out that you said it happened in August. Did it happen in August? Did it happen in September? So then after we saw these text messages from August of 2018, Cassie was asked, do you hate Diddy? And she said that she even still doesn't hate Diddy in the present time. She still has love for the past. We saw more text messages. This one's from August of 2018. Diddy saying to Cassie, "Can you call me, please?" Cassie saying, "I'm so heartbroken." Diddy saying, "Me too, have a good night." The defense kind of trying to point out if the rape happened in August, why is this texting going back and forth? Or maybe this is verifying that this happened in September. And so then we saw some September text messages where Cassie asked Diddy, "How was the yoga treating you?" Diddy was apparently sleeping with a yoga instructor. That's kind of what the insinuation was, that he was having an intimate relationship with his yoga instructor. And then Diddy responded, "What does yoga have to do with me?" Cassie wrote to Diddy, "I heard you were dating." Cassie said, "Who do you think I'm dating?" Cassie said, "I actually need to stop even caring." And Diddy said, "Do you even want to start dating? Let's talk about it." We fast forward to just a week later where Diddy said, "Do what you got to do." Cassie said, "Well, let's just talk tomorrow." Diddy said, "I don't want a combo where you break up with me again." Cassie said, "I do love you. I don't want to I don't want to be your girlfriend anymore." Then we kind of get into Alex Fine a little bit, her now husband. And so around this time, this also being in September of 2018, that Diddy found out that Cassie was seeing Alex Fine when the two being Cassie and Diddy were intimate together, because I guess Alex Fine had called Cassie around this time. And it's pretty important to understand a little bit of why Diddy was possibly upset, because around this time Alex Fine was a personal trainer. Diddy actually hired Alex Fine to train Cassie, so that's just another point that the defense always kind of tries to make there. After Cassie had told Diddy that she had a great night with him, the defense asked, if Alex found out about Diddy. And when the alleged rape was talked about, the defense asked, so did your husband punch a wall when you found this out? And Cassie said, the defense was kind of trying to say it as the rape had happened when Alex was calling. Cassie was kind of trying to clarify that that's not the time that this alleged rape had happened. But essentially the defense was like, you know, when Alex had found out that this had happened to his now wife, that he was just so angry that he became violent and punched a wall during this moment. So I think if, you know, Alex Fine is called as a as a defense witness, that this will definitely be a point that they'll talk about during his testimony if he does take the stand for the defense, because he might have to.
Yeah, it's tough to know about that if he's actually going to. Probably not. Yeah, you know what's interesting, Elizabeth? Apparently they were communicating, 2020? Like recently, 3 years before she filed the lawsuit against him? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, and according to Cassie, they still communicated after their breakup. So you see more messages, some from March of 2019, but the ones from March of 2020, they were still even communicating. This was the time around COVID. Not sure if maybe that kind of played a part into the two still communicating. But I think it's important to kind of note about here. During 2020, Cassie was already married to Alex Fine. She, I think at this point, was pregnant, maybe with their first child at this point. But Diddy had wrote to Cassie, again, this being in March of 2020, miss my best friend. Cassie responded, miss you too. Hope you're taking care of yourself. Diddy responded, again, always paraphrasing here, sending you nothing but love, but the text messages was a lot longer than that. Cassie responded, send my love to them being his children, because they were talking about his kids and how they're doing well and stuff like that. Diddy had wrote back to Cassie saying, you are my ride or die. I thank God for the time that we had together. Again, the defense kind of trying to paint it out that there was love even as recently as just 2020 between the two. And it's interesting because I had noted in my notes, my many of notes, and I'm out on notebook 3 now, that Diddy kept looking at Cassie during this time. He wasn't kind of doing the overanalyzing of playing into his defense. He was kind of looking directly at Cassie. Maybe that was a soft spot for him. Not 100% sure. Obviously not in his mind or anything like that. Then Cassie responded a little later from the whole ride or die text, where Cassie said, I took my time to gather my thoughts. The things you said blew my mind. I wouldn't be in this beautiful time without you. The beautiful time being, you know, her family that she now has with her husband. And then they actually asked for a closure meeting around this time. Again, this being 2020. Then Diddy responded to Cassie saying, tears of joy. I'm happy you found someone. You deserve the world. You deserve to be loved and respected. Please let me know if you want to have a sit down and talk, and I'll make myself available. And even while Cassie was on the stand today, I think she was kind of insinuating that this is something that she had always wanted to hear. But then if you think about just these dates, Jesse, these were in 2020. Cassie said that around this time she was still kind of doing illegal drugs around this time up until 2022. Then she went to rehab in 2023. And then that's when, you know, she was starting to kind of get these flashbacks and starting to kind of through her trauma therapy and stuff like that, still kind of reprocess everything that she had gone through. I mean, this is somebody that she was with for 11 years. This is somebody that she was with throughout all of her most of her adult life, I should say. And so I think, you know, just putting everything into context, it kind of makes a little sense. You know, who doesn't break up with someone and then message them, you know, a couple of years ago talking about the good times? Because that's sometimes things that people do. This is a normal reaction. And so for the most part, I think the defense was trying to point out that this essentially, that they ended with love, that Diddy even after still cared about Cassie. But for the most part, it seemed like, you know, Cassie still, for the most part, it seemed like Cassie still, again, doesn't necessarily hate Diddy or necessarily possibly wish him harm or anything like that. But I think the defense was trying to just point out that there was still love between the two as recently as a couple years ago.
And that's something the defense is going to have to work with, right? And the jury might be saying, you know, how could she not hate him? How could she stay in contact with him? How could she write messages like, I'm so lost without you, when she's now saying that he sex trafficked her? And it's a very, very complicated analysis that is not going to be resolved with her testimony. I believe we're going to have a mental health expert to discuss this a little bit further as well. We saw flavors of this in other cases too, like Harvey Weinstein. But it's a lot for the defense to work with. That is clear, right? If the idea is to say that this was consensual, that's one hand, versus coercive on the other. Not easy for the jury to match it up here. But you know, one of the things I was wondering whether or not the defense is going to work with this, when she went to therapy or when she went to rehab, there was a discussion about memories. And would I be wrong to say the defense was trying to suggest that, and I've seen this before in other cases, that her memories were being manipulated? So in other words, the defense might make the argument, everything was consensual, yet when she goes to rehab and she gets therapy, her memories of her time with Sean Combs are being manipulated to make her feel like she's a victim of a crime or sex trafficking. Am I totally off with that?
No, not at all. I honestly thought, them talking about her rehab stint was, to me personally, just completely inappropriate. But to your point, Jesse, I could see possibly why they were trying to do that. They were essentially talking about how she was treated for neurofeedback. Her brain was hooked up to a bunch of wires to a machine to kind of regulate her brain and regulate her brain activity. She said this was something that while she was there for 45 days at Lilith Star, or Willow Star, I believe it's called, that she did this treatment about 5 or 6 times during her entire stay. So she said it was essentially about once a week, and she thought that the neurofeedback would essentially help her with her trauma. She also did this MDR treatment, another thing for trauma therapy, which helped her recount her memories. And again, to your point, Jesse, I do think that, a professional expert kind of talking about this and kind of explaining this to the jury about why people kind of do this. It's kind of new age even for myself that this type of machine is even possible. But, if you think about it, especially because we cover so many of these types of cases, right? Not just with the Diddy trial, but all across the U.S., sometimes outside of the U.S. too, that, we all know how sometimes it is, as far as victims go, there is delayed memory, there is delayed disclosure as far as disclosing some of the things that you went through, because when something traumatic happens, who doesn't try to block it out of their memory? Who doesn't try to, try to get their head out of it or not process it the way that it's processed? But it seems like through this time period that she was really just trying to better herself around this time. This was a time where, again, she's already married to Alex Fine. She already has children, but it seems like she was finally like, okay, I'm seeking treatment for myself. And then that this trauma therapy really kind of exploded everything into her recounting just maybe all the things that she had went through that she thought were okay at the time and then realized they weren't.
And then it became a question of, what does the prosecution do? There was so much discussion. Well, how's the prosecution going to arguably rehabilitate her testimony, right? The redirect was interesting because at one point she got emotional. You've talked before, Elizabeth, how she was quite calm and cool and composed. Talk to us about what happened on redirect and also the moment when she actually got emotional.
Yeah, and there were a couple emotional points that she had during her redirect testimony. The government kind of coming back to kind of refocus everything in, where they essentially asked Cassie, about having to do these freak-offs while she was having a UTI, something that may kind of play into the force, fraud, and coercion. Cassie's messaging Diddy saying, I want to see you, but I'm an emotional wreck. I don't want to do it. They brought those messages back. The government asked, did you review every single report from the government, especially when they were, especially when the defense was kind of talking about her recounting what she told the government in something in April or in something in 2023. And Cassie had said she didn't review all those reports from the government or federal agents. The government asked her about the affectionate messages, and that Cassie admitted, that Diddy was kind and loving, but it always just didn't last. Cassie said that when he wasn't happy anymore, that it just affected everyone. That she being Cassie was affected by Diddy's moods. They affected her entire life, her career, her self-worth. And that's when, when she starts talking about just kind of, I think, reflecting on her self-image of herself, especially around that time that she was with Diddy, that she does get super emotional. She said that her work essentially would take a back seat to having to do these freak-offs. The government asking, what all does a freak-off entail? She said physical prep, getting supplies, contacting the escorts. And she essentially said that she hung on to every single word that Diddy had said, because remember, she was, 19 years old, still a teenager when she and Diddy had met. And so she said she was asked about Diddy opening up her world, and she said that it was kind of chaotic. She just essentially wanted approval. And the government asked, well, who do you want to have sex with? And she essentially said, Sean and Sean only, this during their 11-year relationship period. The government brought back the defense exhibit of the 2009 messages. The defense kept bringing up the 2009 messages, but even again, you're thinking of the time frame. It's when Diddy and Cassie were first together, and so of course they're a lot more loving, a lot more nurturing in nature and that sort. And Diddy asked Cassie, "You're supposed to be seducing me," and Cassie said she kind of knew what this insinuated, that he just wanted to do a freak off. And so kind of when they were talking about the settlement and the financial situation, that's when she definitely started to get emotional, because during her cross-examination, she was talking about around the time that she had filed her lawsuit, she was actually going to be going on tour and going on tour in like Australia or New Zealand and that sort. And then she said she had canceled the tour, and they were essentially saying, oh, you canceled the tour because you got the financial payout. You didn't need to go on the tour anymore because your finances were already fixed. And then she said, no, she actually canceled the tour because she was overwhelmed after filing her civil claim. Again, that was settled a day after. She said that she was addressing the past and just didn't want to be away from her kids. And then the government asked, would you give all that money back if you never had to do a freak off? And that's when she started really getting emotional. She said that she just wanted agency and autonomy, because again, who wouldn't? I mean, it's your body, it's your choice. And then that the government was kind of honing in on the fact that Diddy was the one who initiated these freak offs, whether or not she was on her UTI, whether or not he was beating her during these sessions. She said that she didn't matter to Diddy, that she kind of felt like nothing. And she said that she admitted, yes, she was open at the beginning, but then that kind of changed over time. And I think that also kind of plays into the whole consent issue. She said that once she was done with Sean Combs, that she didn't do any more freak offs. And then she said that she had told Sean more than once that she didn't want to do these freak offs. She said that she had worried for her safety, for her career, and worried that he just didn't want to be with her anymore. And I think that's why she kind of kept doing this, essentially just to make him happy, something that she had been very forthcoming about. But I also think, there were points that the government really kind of honed in on the fact that this might play into, count 2 of the forced fraud and coercion of sex trafficking, where she was doing these things. She didn't want to be doing these things. She told her partner she didn't want to be doing these things. And yet, according to Cassie, this just became like a job for her. She felt like a sex worker, but that part got struck from the record.
And talking finances, by the way, it also came out that she got a settlement from the Intercontinental Hotel. I don't believe we knew about that.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised that the defense attorneys didn't bring this up during their cross-examination during the first time. They actually brought it up during recross. Now, there's been a lot of rumors and speculation, especially even prior to trial beginning, about how much Cassie received from Diddy in that settlement payout just for her federal lawsuit, right? So I think it was very much a moment where a lot of us were just like, whoa, she got a settlement also from the Intercontinental Hotel. And again, this was something that the defense, Ana Maria Estevao, brought up literally right before she got off the witness stand, where she was asked, did you get a settlement from Intercontinental Hotel? Because she was asked, do you have any more pending lawsuits or any more demands that you had made out for money? And Cassie said that they did reach settlement negotiations very recently. She said about either last week or last month or so, and it was for $10 million. And I think what the defense was trying to do, again, kind of painted out that she was just the reason for her wanting to do this was essentially for money or financial reasons. And I'm not sure how much of a sticking point that really was for jurors, but I was, again, kind of surprised that they didn't bring this up during the cross-examination. But maybe it was a point that this could be something that the jury just kind of left with. Left with that impression of Cassie once she got off the witness stand.
I have a feeling that if the judge didn't impose the order that she had to finish up her testimony by the end of the week, this testimony would have gone well into Monday. But the judge wanted to make sure, she's pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
1 week down, make sure she leaves the stand, because there was so much more to get into. Now, she apparently was not the only witness who took the stand. There were 2 more witnesses who took the stand today. I got to talk about first this special agent. Who was this special agent? What did we learn from this special agent?
Oh, we learned a lot, Jesse, from Special Agent Yazine Binda from Homeland Security Investigation. She was questioned by AUSA Madison Smizer. At first, when she had taken the witness stand, I was kind of like, I'm wondering what she's going to testify, what she's going to talk about. She's coming after a very critical witness, and this special agent had a lot of very critical information. And so she was essentially somebody who had handled the arrest logistics of Diddy. The arrest happened just in this past September. And so we got a kind of inside look into what all was in the Park Hyatt Hotel right here in Manhattan. And so we saw a lot of exhibits, and a lot of notable exhibits, I will say that. And so the warrant was executed around 11:30 p.m. that day, and this happened on September 16th of 2024, a notable date. That's the date that Diddy got arrested. And so her role was essentially to be a photographer. So she photographed the entire hotel room. So we saw a bunch of exhibits. We saw exhibits of the room layout, where you can see a bed, a TV window, a desk, a hallway closet. You saw a closer image of the bedroom and the bathroom closet. You saw the hallway closet. You saw a bag at the bottom of a closet. You saw a hard drive. You saw, more interesting, a Ziploc bag of, you may guess it, Jesse, baby oil and Astroglide, something that a lot of us were just like, whoa, because this is coming right after Cassie's testimony. Diddy's defense team is trying to paint him out as somebody who just kind of left the freak offs behind, left the drugs behind. But then you're seeing that as recently as just this past September, he had a bag full of baby oil, 5 bottles of it found in the bathtub, Astroglide in the lube in the bathtub. Then you see a nightstand. It had a Louis Vuitton bag, a Louis Vuitton med bag, something that Cassie had talked about during her testimony. And I think the government really did a great job in kind of presenting this after Cassie's testimony, because I think once we saw the baby oil, we were just like, whoa, because again, this was very recently. And so we saw clonazepam given to an alias, Frank Black, somebody that Cassie had talked about while she was on the witness stand. It was one of the aliases that Diddy had used when he was booking hotel rooms or getting escorts and that sort. What is clonazepam? I believe it's an ED medication. Then we see lube in the drawer of a nightstand. More baby oil is found. You see a nightstand with a red iPhone. That iPhone was seized as well as a phone that was on Christina Corum's person, another phone from the hotel, and the hard drive. You see a bottle of medications in that in these exhibits. You see a lighting device in the living room, and the special agent was describing it as mood lighting. Again, Cassie says during these freak-offs that the lights and the directions, this kind of played into it. So then you start to see a pink baggie. And it was interesting because the government said that this pink bag tested positive for MDMA and ketamine. And I think because it was in a pink bag, we kind of know that it possibly another thing, it's called pink cocaine. And so then they passed around this medicine bottle with the pink baggies around to the jury. And I will say, this is what I did see from the jurors, is a lot of them really overanalyzing it. A lot of them kind of looking into it, seeing what these little pink baggies are and stuff like that. Then you see a black fanny pack in one of the exhibits. And according to the special agent, that black fanny pack had $9,000 of cash in it. To me, I thought that was like, whoa, because again, if you're trying to paint it to be like that this was just a thing that they had done so long ago or anything like that, but this was as recently as just September 16th of last year, it was a lot kind of going on. So I was wondering how the cross-examination would go about this, especially because this seems really kind of damning in my opinion, because I think even when the baby oil was shown, a lot of people were just like, and I think, I couldn't see Diddy's face directly or anything like that when it was shown, but it was just kind of like, where's the defense going to kind of take this? And so what the defense did was essentially kind of harp on that this warrant talked about seized cash and bulk cash, and that wondering why the cash was taken and stuff like that. But I think that, you know, given that these are federal agents who made this search, like, really what other kind of questions could they ask to kind of poke holes in things beyond just, why did you guys seize the cash? Why did you seize the $9,000? And so I thought Special Agent Binda's testimony today was very compelling, and it very kind of verified a lot of Cassie's claims, especially when it comes to like habits that Diddy had, like keeping medicine in a Louis Vuitton bag, something that he had still did even while he was with Cassie. The baby oil, I know a lot of people talk about the baby oil, but the fact that there were so many bottles of baby oil in this hotel room that didn't look the biggest or anything like that from the pictures that we saw, but who knows, it might have been a humongous suite, but again, you know how photographs go. But I thought Special Agent Binda's testimony was very much like, whoa, okay. After they got Cassie off the stand, I see where the government did an excellent job of kind of making those connections there.
It looks like, I think a fair argument could be, even after all this time, right before his arrest, he might have been about to engage in a freak-off. And so if you have the bottle, the baby oil, you got cash, freak-off, you know, transportation to engage in prostitution, it just corroborates a lot of what was said. So I can understand why that's an important witness. And now we move on to the final witness of the day, who definitely did not finish her testimony today, will be back next week. So that now brings us to Dawn Richard. This is somebody that we thought was going to be the next witness. Huge witness. This is somebody who had filed their own lawsuit against Sean Combs, former member of Danity Kane. Took the stand in what, the last 15, 20 minutes of the day? Talk to us about what she testified to so far.
I'm pretty surprised that the government even called Dawn Richard to the stand today, because we were so close to the 5 p.m. deadline of court being done for the day, the jury going home, especially to enjoy their weekend after just a long week of testimony. But she was called to the stand as the third witness of the day, the first being Cassie, of course, the second one being Special Agent Binda, and then now Dawn Richard taking the stand. She walked into the courtroom. From what I could see of her, didn't pay any type of attention to Diddy or anything like that. Similar to Cassie, just made a direct line straight to the witness stand. But what I will know, Jesse, about kind of seeing Dawn Richard and just her tone, she didn't seem like she really wanted to be there. She seemed very uncomfortable, and I can only imagine why. This was someone that she had had a professional relationship and even possibly a friendship with for a number of years. She had worked with him on her music for a number of years. He had first discovered her when she was auditioning for making the band. She made the band, that band being obviously Danity Kane, and then still continued to work with Diddy for a number of years, even after Danity Kane disbanded, and even after Dirty Money disbanded as well too, another group that Dawn Richard was in with Diddy, as well as another performer named Kalina Harper. And so as far as just the 20 minutes of the testimony that we got today, we kind of started out with those foundational questions, right? How old is she? She being 42 years old. She's from New Orleans. She was very soft-spoken on the witness stand. There was a moment where she did have to identify Sean Combs, aka Diddy. She did kind of point over to him, and what I saw from Diddy was something kind of interesting, where he did this with his hands, where he kind of just raised his hands up at the stand. I don't know if it was like to do a wave or just to, I don't know what it was, but it was just a very interesting moment that he had did, and nothing that was called out afterwards about it. But she was asked just about her relationship with Cassie, how often that she saw Cassie and maybe Diddy together, and she actually said she saw them all the time. So this was around the 2009 period, and the 2009 incident was definitely brought up, something that she had spoken about or alleged that happened in her civil claim against Diddy as well too. It was an incident where she had said that Cassie was attacked by Diddy. He had come down the stairs, he was screaming, and essentially beat her in front of Dawn Richard as well as the other band member, Kalina Harper, and because he was demanding Cassie to get him food. And she said that she had seen Diddy frequently beat Cassie, but this particular incident was something that the defense was very much kind of a little bit agitated about, and I'll get to that point in just a second. But at this point, Cassie was cooking Diddy breakfast. Diddy comes down from the top level of his home, and Diddy, according to Dawn Richard's testimony, says, "Where the F is my eggs?" And then Diddy allegedly took this pan, this skillet, and attempted to hit Cassie in the head with it. Cassie, according to Dawn Richard's testimony, gets into a fetal position. She hides her head, and she said Cassie didn't fight back during this incident. She just fell to the ground. She said she saw Diddy punch and grab Cassie's head, drag her up by the head up to the upstairs. And then the next thing you know, she's hearing glass breaking and yelling. And then she said that she was, and this is a point why I do feel like she was a little kind of maybe upset with herself about, or just kind of embarrassed to say out loud, where she said that she was scared to do anything, meaning that she didn't intervene in this situation. She didn't call the cops. And she said that when this happened in 2009, that she had never seen anything like it before. And that she thought if she were to intervene, that it just might get worse for herself, because if she's seeing, a boyfriend and a girlfriend get into this spat, she only thought what could happen next to herself. And so she says the next day, Diddy actually called her to record, just to go back into the recording studio, because that's what they had to do, go back to work. And so this was also something that she had talked about at great length in her civil claim, that around this time, the day after this incident had happened, that Diddy gave Dawn and Kalina, her other bandmate, some flowers and told them that this was just a passionate argument that Cassie and Diddy had had with one another, and it was just between them and their relationship, and essentially said not to say anything about it because he wanted to take this group to the top. And he said people go missing, and that's where Mark Agnifilo gets up and he objects. They go to a sidebar, they discuss it back and forth, because they wanted to strike this testimony, because they think that it's kind of a reach to kind of be making these claims that missing equals death threats and that sort. But the government, from their perspective, they think that this kind of goes to, and these were the arguments that were presented outside of the jury's presence. So the jury didn't get to hear any of this portion, but the government essentially argued that these threats were made to witnesses reflect Diddy's consciousness of guilt. He said he gave the witness, or the government said that Diddy gave witnesses flowers and locked them in a door, the door being in the recording studio. Again, kind of going to their point of consciousness of guilt. And this kind of all goes to the abuse of count two being the trafficking count in his indictment. And the defense says, well, anytime Diddy is violent toward Cassie, is it sex trafficking, and calls it prejudicial testimony of her saying, her making the missing point there. The judge said, but if the government alleges it's force, fraud, and coercion, the jury could draw this. Why wouldn't this be relevant? And the defense argued Cassie didn't mention it. It didn't happen because Cassie didn't mention it. It's just speculation of violence from this event that it affected Cassie, and said it's prejudicial when Dawn said Diddy makes people go away. And again, that kind of makes this connection that these go to death threats. But the government brought back Cassie's testimony from the transcripts, where Cassie said she actually didn't remember every single act of violence because there was just so many. So maybe she just genuinely didn't recall this incident happening, or maybe this was something because so many, according to her, violent encounters had happened, that this wasn't a moment where she talked about it on the witness stand. But it seems like this will kind of be a point that will definitely be brought up on Monday, whether or not we'll kind of hear more of the alleged Diddy threat of making people go missing if they speak out against him. I think that's a point that the government will definitely start again on Monday, bright and early Monday morning, as Dawn Richard gets back on the stand under direct.
And I know you're going to be there. Elizabeth Millner, have a restful weekend. You deserve it after an incredible week of reporting from that courthouse. Thank you so much. It was great seeing you. You're our eyes and ears. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.